Hmm. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Music and Makerspaces. This is our Library Makers webinar. My name is Kelly Nimitz. I am the chairperson of the Events and Programs Committee for Library Makers. And I am joined by my co-producer, Marnie, as well. She's going to be helping me out and with this presentation. If you guys have any questions or anything, you can go ahead and leave them in the chat, and then we will answer them at the very end. You can also introduce yourselves for anybody that's coming in. I'll leave the poll up while I do my intro, so it gives people that are just coming in a chance to, answer and get to know themselves. So first off, for those that are new to Library Makers, we are a community that connect and support library maker staff of all levels and experience. We recognize the experience and strengths that each member brings to the community. We want to create a safe and welcoming space for library maker staff to ask questions, share knowledge, find a mentor, develop skills, and/or exchange ideas with a diverse group of professionals, and to equip and advance library professionals to be innovative leaders in the field. If you ever want to join, it's free to join. It's librarymakers.org. We are also looking for new committee members to join some of the different committees that are involved in Library Makers. So if you are interested in something like what we do, where we help create events like this, you're definitely welcome to uh, welcome to join. I will try to see if I can collect the link for for self nominations later on. Um, but yeah, so that's Library Makers in a nutshell. Let me see if I can find the poll. So. So it looks like we have somebody else that's answering it, but we have a few people here, so it's glad to see. It looks like some people are here from all over. So we have some people from libraries in California and from Michigan and Illinois, so it's good to see. I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and end the poll really quickly. If anybody at Louisiana, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll really quickly. So we can go ahead and get started. But it looks like we have. I'll see if I can try to share the results with everybody. So it looks like we have a few people from the south. That's awesome. From the north as well. Looks like we have school libraries. Awesome. And it looks like most people are from a rural community. Welcome. Well, I hope this is a really good, informative webinar for everybody. So we'll go ahead and get started. So today our presenter is going to be Coley Mixon. If I mispronounce any names at all, just let me know. They work at Berkeley Public Library, and they have some experience with having music resources in their maker spaces. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and give the floor to Coley.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Kelly. Hey, everyone. Welcome. I'm so happy that you all are here. As Kelly said, my name's Coley Mixon. I I love music. I love sound. I love giving people access to making sound. And today I just want to share a little bit of things that I know, but also hear from you all because I don't know, I like being really interactive. So I'm going to share my screen here. And I'm also going to share the sound because I'm going to show you guys some cool stuff that's like web browser based. So can everyone see my slides? Most excellent. Okay, cool. Like I said, I'm Coley. I love having conversations. So really kind of this first couple of minutes, I just wanted to take some time to be like, one, get to know you all, because I'm really appreciative that you're spending this time and space with me. But two, I also recognize that even though I'm presenting today, I might not be the only one here with some like cool stuff that your library is doing, or maybe tools that you just got that you're not sure about, but you want to learn more. Or maybe you've seen really cool things at other libraries you're excited about. Or perhaps you're like, I don't know anything about sound production, music making, but I want to learn. You can just tell us about why you love music or who your favorite artists or composers are. So yeah, does anybody have any? Feel free to drop in the chat too if you don't want to unmute, but I always encourage voices if you'd like to share yours. Does anyone have any sound related projects or programs or tools?
I'm working on some K-pop ideas for a K-pop party I'm doing this summer, if that helps.
Oh, that's awesome. And I know the library that I currently work at, we don't have like a traditional makerspace or recording studio, anything like that. But we do sort of like pop-up labs as well as pop-up electronic music making programming. And actually on the slide deck here in the corner, you can see this is one of my former coworkers in the King County Library System playing with one of our Ableton push boards. So we use Abletons. There, let's see. Oh, DJ equipment I see in the chat. Creation stations that I need help with. Cool. A DJ crash course showdown. Nice. I have a couple of some free DAWs that are more specific towards like DJing and sampling and that sort of world, which is a whole like of its own like ball game, which is really cool. But that's so awesome that you all have DJing equipment. Yeah. I'll just leave a little space in case anyone else wants to share. Or just like your favorite band, artists, or things that you'd love to see. Mm. Yeah, and I see that you say you're the video, more of the video production expert. I actually think that audio and video production are very closely related siblings or cousins. And if you sort of know a little bit about one, it's sort of easy to start diving into the other. I see another one. We did a poetry event in April. Love to expand that into future to create a recording. Oh yeah, poetry zines and like some audio readings of poetry would be super cool. Yeah, so today, I kind of framed it around music, but we can really think about all of this as like sound in general. So, all right. Well, thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it. And like I said, any questions, thoughts, jokes, feel free to unmute. I love, you know, being like just learning from other people. So. Okay, so to kind of get started, the way that I'm framing this presentation is I'm going to be talking about some more like digital tools, but mostly like software, some hardware, versus looking at the music making process. Because I know a lot of you probably have a lot of programming experience where you know how to like frame some prompts or like give people space to like start getting into sort of their creation. We also won't be talking too much about like music theory or like building physical instruments, although that's totally a whole nother way you could look at like music making and makerspaces is like using electronics to make little tiny synthesizers or cutting up cardboard and like letting folks build a bunch of really interesting cardboard instruments. So we'll be thinking a little bit less about that and more about different like hardware and software today. That might be helpful for different types of audio and music related programs. So within the audio world, you may have heard some of these terms. I'm not one always for jargon, but I always like to like say the things in case you hear them or see them out in the world as you're doing research. So the first sort of thing is something known as a DAW, which is short for a digital audio workstation. That essentially means like it's a, you know, DAW shorthand for some type of software program used for helping you create music, create sound, record, edit, produce. There's a whole gambit of different digital audio workstations out in the world, and each one sort of have their different types of focuses. And we're going to look at several that are some really good free ones, as well as some paid DAW resources, so sort of depending on what your library needs. Um, but yeah, that's what, if you're out in the world, you might hear DAW, but DAW is a digital audio workstation. And I should also mention that some of the DAWs that I'm looking at today are mostly going to be like computer-based ones. There's a ton of stuff out there for anybody that likes working on tablets or iPads. And actually, some of these even have app versions that we can look at. But I just kind of want to talk a little bit about some of the free ones that you can download onto your libraries. If you guys have computers at your library, and some of these are browser-based, so we're going to look a little bit of both. So the first that y'all may have heard of is something called Audacity. Let me open this up. Audacity is awesome. It's been voted one of the premier open source audio recording softwares for a long time. This is their website, if you can see it, audacityteam.com. You can see here, this actually takes you to a direct link where you can download the software program and then start making. The other really nice thing about it is it recently was updated and it has a ton of really cool effects, features for like recording and things like that. And there's a forum. So if you ever get stuck, because it is so huge and so many people use Audacity, there's forums and tutorials here where you can kind of start learning or point your library patrons to if you have this software um, on any of your library computers. So I recommend Audacity. We actually have Audacity here at my library on, I want to say, all of our patron computers. So it's just something that's a package, even not on our like Makerspace specific computers, but on our general public PCs. So if anyone needs to do audio editing, they can do it. It's also a very lightweight app. And what I mean by that is if you're working with like your IT team, one, it has been like very well vetted, so you don't have to worry. I know some open source things that are newer, people worry, especially for security purposes on downloading them. But Audacity is fairly well known. And so it's something that if your library doesn't have, you might be able to chat with the folks that help put the software on your computers. So that's Audacity. The next one I'm super excited about. Oop, and it's called BandLab. I love BandLab. Oop, it wants me to put my birthday in. Um, I'm putting in a fake birthday. Okay. So I thought it looks like it needs a birthday now, but BandLab, I logged into my account. So let me log out quick so I can show you what it looks like. So BandLab is actually a digital audio workstation that's web browser based. So one thing that's really nice about this is any of your library patrons could create their own account, and if they have access to a computer outside of the library, they can continue working on whatever projects they're working on. So they can get started, they can come in and learn, they could use some of your hardware that you might have at the library, but then they can continue editing and producing. Um, BandLab does have some paid tiers, so that's just something to know, but the general one is free. It's changed a little bit in the few years that I've been using it. By that I mean it's almost more like a social media platform now, where people making music can also like share it on this BandLab platform as they're making. But I'll show you here. The downside for like library settings is folks do have to have their own email account. And so if your library patrons don't have an email, they'll need to create one. Um, and let me log in, just so I can kind of show you this one. Welcome in to the Berkeley Public Library. Oh, and we have overhead announcements that are happening right now. So hopefully you all can still hear me. But like I said, so when you're logged in, you can see it's sort of almost like a social media platform now. And I don't ever really use it that way at all. But if I go into this button here up at the top that says create, and I'm just going to do new projects. And you can see it actually wants to be like, hey, what type of track do you want? So not all DAWs will do this, and Audacity is a great example, is you just create something that's known as a track. I'm not going to get too deep into technical stuff, but I will share my contact information because I can always help in the future. So try not to stress or worry too much about this, because we're mostly just looking at different types of tools today versus like the deep down technical things of recording. But usually in a DAW, you have something called a track, and you can kind of think about this. I always like to have people imagine the analog version of this, because we're talking about digital stuff here. But, way back in the late 1900s and even earlier, folks, when they'd be recording, would have like strips of tape. And each one of those tapes might have a track on it, right? Like you lay down your guitar track or your drum tracks and your bass tracks. The digital world usually always tries to replicate processes that have happened like in the analog world. And so you can see here in BandLab, the really cool thing is it's like, what type of track do you want to make? There's a lot of AI stuff in BandLab, just FYI. However you feel about AI is wonderful. But it's just something to be aware of. Like you can put in a prompt and it will make you music based on the prompts that you do. But you can also create a lot of your own. So you can see there's drum machines, MIDI instruments, or even something here called voice and audio. So voice and audio would be like I'm plugging in my microphone or my guitar and sending audio into the computer. And we'll talk about that process here in a second. But you can also see I can like create a little drum machine track. And again, it has some beat starters. I'm just going to start from scratch. But simply because I want to show you how powerful and cool this is to get started. BandLab uses something called a grid for beats. And if you're looking down here at my screen, you can see that each one of these is almost like a music measure. Way on the side, it might be kind of hard to see. There's different types of drums. Hi-hats, cymbals, snares, and like a kick drum. Can you all hear that when I click? I shared my audio, so hopefully you can hear it cool. And look, I'm just literally clicking, right? Like there's a snare, and then I can hit some play. Oops, play my pattern here. And look, I was just like randomly clicking like really quickly by creating this drum machine. The other cool thing is you can see here they have instruments. This is something called an 808. An 808 is a classic sort of drum machine that you've probably heard on all of your favorite like Prince records and a lot of like hip hop producers from the 80s, 90s into the now. So it's sort of like famous sounds, right? You can see they have some other built-in different drum sounds. So maybe you like boom bap records or dark hip hop, dubstep, EDM, fat 90s. So each one of these is like something that sounds a little different. Like you can see they actually have one called Prince because he must be famous or something. I'll just switch it to that. And then you can just hear the difference from that 808 to this is just a different type of drum. So, and then you can even add like effects. So this, for being browser-based, this can do so much. Like, I don't know, ambient fuzz. I'm just going to click on it randomly and then we'll go back to my drum machine. And I'm so sorry if this is super loud, but. So there's a million ways you can go down into this. Audacity, you can get Audacity on this machine. Let me open it really quick, just so you can sort of see visually the difference. Here it goes. Now Audacity, this is Audacity, which is a software I've downloaded to my computer. And it totally looks different, right? It looks open source. It probably looks like something you've seen on a computer if any of you are as old as me back in the late 90s or early 2000s. And you can see up here, it has sort of these same sort of concepts, right? Like tracks, add new, mono track, stereo track. Again, I'm not going to get too deep into all the technical stuff, like what's the difference between mono and stereo? They're just different ways that the audio gets routed through headphones and speakers and recording processes. Again, we won't worry too deep about that, but and you can see there's a record button and a play button. But this doesn't have built-in MIDI the same way BandLab does. This is much more for like maybe you're doing podcasting or you've got a way to plug an instrument in or a MIDI machine into your computer and then record in. So Audacity is a little bit more about like recording analog audio into your computer and editing. But I will say you can do a ton in this. There's also effects as well. I used Audacity. Those announcements you may have heard behind me were all recorded and edited in Audacity. So it's still quite a powerful software. It's just a different type. So we're going to head back to my little slide. And this is what you'll notice about different DAWs in the world is each one is kind of specific to what it is that you want to do. So that's something that's really important is to think about, what are my patrons wanting to do? Do they want to make beats, make samples, do DJing stuff? Are they more interested in doing like podcasting? What's the best tool for what my patrons want to do? Um, Reaper is also a great free one. Let's see if this opens up here. I don't have Reaper on my computer, but you can see if you're looking at sort of this image of the software, a lot of these start looking pretty similar, where you've got each one of these is like an audio track where you can like record across space and time. So Reaper, my understanding, also doesn't have like built-in MIDI per se, but you can add in your own. So there's like so many layers. Reaper is also free. And I should also put a little asterisk on that, as Reaper also has some like higher tiered paid versions, but the basic download is great. And I have friends that do like podcasting and they specifically use Reaper. So it's another great like vocal one. The next two here, Serato Studio and Mix, I highly recommend, especially since I know folks said in the chat that they have DJing equipment and want to do like DJing stuff. Serato is definitely leaning towards grabbing some like sample bits, making beats, slicing them up. It's actually a DJing software, and this is their free version. And I'll kind of just come down here to this little image so you can sort of see what it looks like. It lets you load up samples. And I know someone in the chat also said they do video editing. So I think like digital audio workstations and video editing softwares can sometimes look alike or similar, where you've almost got like a preview of your audio wave. And then here, that grid we were looking at in BandLab, you can see it's kind of got the similar idea where you can like make slice things across space and time. So this is Serato Studio. Mix, I actually already have open in a tab here. Mix is a DJing specific platform. So this one is also less about like recording audio, but more about like if you had a DJ deck, you can load up two sounds and then mix them together. So quite literally blending audio versus creating audio. And then this last one I've heard really good things about. I haven't used personally, but it is also free. Traction is sort of another well-known music manufacturer. They make different types of instruments, and then they have a non-free version of the software. But once again, you can kind of see if we're looking at the image, you'll have tracks and then audio stacks. And this one I think is a little bit like rounded, where it's got, and actually you can kind of see it's like, who are you? Are you recording a band? Are you trying to do podcasting? Are you an electronic producer trying to make some samples? This one's got quite a lot. And again, you can like add on top. So that's like a super speedy through some free DAWs. And I'll also say there's probably a million more out there that I don't necessarily have experience with, but you all might, or your patrons might ask about. So now, of course, there's paid DAWs. And one thing I should say on free DAWs, if anyone is using like a Mac platform, an Apple platform, GarageBand comes for free with Apple, although I always am like, it's free, but you like buy the Apple product. Um, these are paid DAWs. So you have something called Ableton Live. I love Ableton. I am not getting paid by them in any stretch of the imagination, though that would be great if you want to sponsor me. They're awesome. Our library has Ableton here. Ableton is super cool because it is both a digital audio workstation, but they also have hardware that is specific to like making music and beats in their software. One other reason I kind of fell in love with Ableton personally was one, I had never used Ableton until a couple libraries ago. We did a survey with some of our teens and we were like, okay, if we had money and could buy you audio software, what do you want? And all of them were like Ableton. And I had never used it before. But two, Ableton does discounts for learning institutions, and they include public libraries and, of course, school libraries in that too. Um, and their education discount's pretty good. Like you can get a license. The other nice thing about Ableton is they're not subscription based. So once you buy the platform, you have it. So FL Studio, is also kind of a very well-known one. I have a lot of friends that use it. I don't use it, but it sort of works similar. Logic Pro is Apple's kind of paid version. And then you've got Pro Tools. And all four of these, I'd say, are pretty industry standards. What I mean by that is most artists, recording studios might be using one of these, although there's probably several artists out there who are now using some of these free ones. So just because these are free does not mean they're less than the paid ones. Some of the pros of the paid ones is you might just get more built-in sounds, more built-in effects, an easier way of like editing audio and diving sort of deeper into the process. But for what a lot of our libraries do, I think the free ones like are really incredible. Um, so yeah, these are some of the paid DAWs. And I don't have Ableton on this computer. I do always like to show, like I said in my intro, our library actually doesn't have a traditional makerspace, and so we sort of do like on the fly pop-up creative labs. And right now, one of my colleagues is leading like an electronic music making studio where folks can come in and learn. And this is one of the Ableton Live's hardware. And it's nice because it's very pushy and tactile, and then you don't have to use the computer to work with the software. So for all different types of learning, this is why I like Ableton. It kind of makes a nice accessible point. It's not accessible fully though, because it is a paid software. So it's like the pros and cons of what they have happening. Let me, okay. So those are some of digital audio workstation or softwares. So now I'm just going to chat about some of the other tools that sort of bring the whole thing together. But as I was showing you in BandLab, is there's some softwares out there where you might not need any of these other tools. You can just start creating with the software itself. Um, Having some of these other tools sort of expands what your library and your patrons might be able to do. And again, I always think about this as a matter of like, what do your patrons want to create? Like, what are they interested in? Um, Microphones. Uh, I'm imagining everybody knows what a microphone is, but right, it's one of those external recording devices. Out in the worlds of microphones, there are many different types of microphones. And I would say at the library, you're mostly wanting to probably look at purchasing a dynamic mic or a condenser microphone. Um, and again, this starts getting into some of the more like audio recording technicals. I always like leaning on a dynamic microphone um, because dynamic mics are super versatile. And if your patrons drop them, they're not going to get damaged. Sort of a classic one that I always recommend is the Shure SM58. And you've probably seen it, right? Like these are like the types of microphones that you'd see people up on stage singing into, often used on stage because again, you know, you're flinging it around, you drop it, you're not going to smash the internal part of the microphone. And dynamic mics, the Shure SM58 are great for vocals, but you can also use them for instruments and different things. So this type of mic is sort of an all-around versatile type of mic. A condenser microphone would also be nice, especially if you're doing more, and you're going to see how bad I am at spelling, but condenser microphone would be great for like podcasting studios. I think that there's a Rode T1, and they're more expensive. So dynamic microphones are going to be cheaper. Condensers are going to lean a little bit more expensive. This one, the Rode NT1 is nice because it comes usually with all sort of the nice sort of stuff to keep it safe and mounting gear. You don't have to get these. Like again, I'm not sponsoring any of this, just showing you tools that I think kind of stand the test of time. But condensers are a little bit more fragile. And as you can see, they can kind of start getting pricey. And sort of the big difference is a cardioid. So within the world of condensers, there's different shapes. Cardioid microphone, the little recording tongue on the inside is shaped like a heart, which is why they call it that. They're sort of dialed in for vocals. So if you ever want something that's a little like, okay, I've got this sweet spot of like my nice podcasting voice. I'm going to talk to you today about I don't know, whatever the subject is of our folks' recordings. You could lean this way too. So there's a million different types of microphones, a bunch of different types of condenser mics and dynamic mics, and happily encourage you to research them if you're a nerd like me and want to learn more. The microphones are really helpful. And now if you have a microphone, you're probably going to want something known as an audio interface. So we're going to look at a little closer on the next slide. But I sort of wanted to just point out some of these other things that can be helpful for music making. MIDI controllers are like little keyboards. You can get these really cheap now, which is awesome. Like there's some Akai, like one or two scales of like little piano keyboards that you can use as a MIDI controller. MIDI stands for Musical Instruments Digital Interface. Again, don't have to remember that. And you may have heard the term MIDI before. MIDI is what we were looking at in Band Lab, right? Where I was giving the computer some information and it was assigning sound to it. But then when I felt like it wasn't the right sound I wanted, I could switch what it sounded like. MIDI lets us say, here's your digital information, here's the notes I want to play, but I can maybe change the sound from a bass to a horn section instead. And so it's sort of just tracking like the mathematical number of whatever that note is. And then you can tell the software what you want that MIDI to sound like. Um, Synthesizers, instruments. I've got a list of some library examples where you see there's some libraries out there that have like a whole range of instruments that patrons can check out and use, etc. So these are kind of like, right, you can think about them expansion packs, like building on your music and your sound recording power. An audio interface, um, I think is probably one of your most essential tools, especially if you're trying to start sort of like a sound and music making program at your library. They can look like this. This actually is like the cleaned up version of something called the Focusrite Scarlett. Um, and what an audio interface is basically it's a little piece of hardware that lets you convert analog to digital and then digital back into analog. So what I mean by that is I can plug in a guitar, I can plug in a microphone, and I can send that information into the computer software. And then I can also send it back out via speakers or headphones from this little device. The other sort of benefit of these is they often have better sound cards in them than most computers do. And so as your patrons are creating sound or music, they won't get quite as much lag. Um, and so it just kind of helps with the recording process. Um, and so I always think these are so usually just helpful, a good place to start. And again, they can be super pricey or relatively expensive. The ones that we have at my library are the Focusrite Scarletts. Let me show you here. Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. And like this is the new version. It's all fancy. So again, and there's different ones, right? Like there's the solo, and a lot of the different prices here are just depending on like what's the sound card inside look like, how many inputs and outputs do you have? So if we're looking at this one here, you can see it has two inputs, and these are things that you can connect cables to, which generally are microphone cables are called XLRs. And a lot of instrument cables are something known as like a 1/4 inch, which is like the size of the jack. Um, and because I'm on the internet, I'm just going to show you all just so there's a visual. I learn better when I see things. This is an XLR cable here, and this is a 1/4 inch jack. And cables also come in a wide variety of lengths, capacities, and prices, which generally, you know, I would say buy the, the, the best that you can afford in terms of cables because they'll just last you longer. Cool. Okay. So these are some of like the extra little things in terms of hardware to kind of get started. And then And I can also have all these links be shared out somewhere on Library Makers too, at some point. And I know this is being recorded, but links are, it's nice to like have a list versus like hand typing out a screenshot link that you're watching. Um, just some other like cool things. And the thing that to me is so exciting about music and audio is that it's like a deep dive into an infinity pool where you can just keep swimming deeper and deeper down. This little platform is one of the Chrome experiment song makers. And one thing I like about this, especially if you're sort of doing some like introduction to music production type of stuff, like on a computer or working with, I don't know, all ages. Sometimes I'm like working with kids, but I feel like young people know better than me all the time. But if you're looking at the screen, you're probably noticing once again, there's this grid. And grids are kind of the new, like something that's been happening quite a lot in digital audio workstations. And I always like to think folks, a grid is sort of like your music bar. And again, I don't expect anyone to be like, let me talk about music theory, right? But if you have like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you sort of have these bars of music, and you can see they tried to make one bar gray, one bar a little lighter. And then you can, my little, you can kind of change your instruments here, right? Once again, I can click. And then start adding some or it could be like, I want piano, or I want strings. And yeah, this is one of the many kind of Chrome experiments that Google made a couple of years ago. But you can still play with it and kind of like change the tempo here and change the drum sounds, all sorts of things. So even though it's kind of simple and easy to play with, it's really cool to kind of start having folks think about, oh, what happens if I place the beat on the 1? Like maybe this column is the 1, or how does the feeling change if I put it on the 2? That sort of thing. So that's Songmaker. And this next link, I love this website. And again, I know it sounds like I'm sponsored by Ableton, but I promise that I'm not. Even if you don't use Ableton as a DAW, I just recommend this website so much because it sort of has folks start thinking about like, what does it mean to make music on a computer? And it walks you through like make beats. Like this is kind of like getting started. Like, let's just explore what happens if you have a drum pattern, a bass line, chords, and a melody. And, suddenly there's something happening, right? And it's exciting. And then I can walk to the next, sort of click on the next thing that's like beats. And once again, it kind of starts having you look at this musical pattern and asking some questions of like, how does the feeling change as the tempo changes? And tempo is sort of like how fast the song is. And oftentimes you'll see something known as BPM associated with tempo. That's beats per minute. So like how many of these are happening as the song is going through, right? And so if we have this little so it's kind of like, I just love this website. And then it's like, well, what are these sounds? Like, what actually is this? And so it's kind of having folks go through like a kick sound versus like a clap or a snare, um, open and closed hi-hat, all that sorts of stuff. And you can click on these to like hear what it sounds like. And like I said, there are chapters here, right? So there's beats, there's notes and scales, there's strong song structure. They even have like here you can come in and be like song forms. Like what happens if I'm looking at something with an intro, verse, pre-chorus? So people could dive in. Ableton also, which I should have linked, but I could add that to this, is they have a whole section on synthesis. And you'll see that one of the resources I put on there are synths, and synths are a whole nother like deep world you can dive into. Now I'm like, I want to go to learning synths. Here we go. So it's learningsense.ableton.com, where then you can also, there's also chapters here where you can learn about all these different, like how do synths make sound, like what's an oscillator, where do I go from here, that sort of stuff. Um, just kind of get through some of these quick, so I want to make sure we have time for like questions and jamming. This is, no, nothing's coming up on this. Let me relive this. Oh, it's loading. It's because I'm not patient. I love this website. It's called tinytools.directory. It is not just for sound, but you can actually like say like, oh, I'm just looking for sound editing tools. And I'll actually see there's some Audacity. Reaper is on here as well. There's a whole bunch of different like sound editors, or there's something like sound effects, or even music tools. But you could also see on here, maybe you're interested in animation. Like these are open source animation stuff. Or I know there was a zine program happening. There's some cool like zine publishing templates in here as well. Um, so I love this. I don't know how often it's updated, but it's cool. Tinytools.directory. It's just kind of a great place for makers to go to kind of learn about some of these open source and cool making softwares. And once again, I feel like all of us library folks love learning resources. GitHub is awesome. It's like a coding platform, but this page here is specific to open source audio plugins and applications. Plugins are like things you can literally plug into your DAW setup, your digital audio workstation setup. So whether it's like an analog modeling synthesizer, right? Like making something seem like you're working with a synth, versus some of these are actually like recording programs or, reverb, delay, which are like audio effects. So this is like you're knee deep in it and you just want to keep sliding down the hill of audio. This is a cool website with a ton of resources. And then my last slide are just some cool library examples. And most of these are public libraries, so I apologize for that. Because I know there's a ton of folks from different types of libraries that are here in the library makers crew. I always am shouting out the Midwest in general, but the Lawrence, Kansas Public Library has a super cool recording studio. And then one of my favorite things, besides the fact they of course have a very nice like space for recording and things, um, this program, and I haven't been here in person, but I like this. They like have local engineers listed here where it's like, hey, we can connect some of the creators in our community to other creators and like help people start trying to be a producer too. So I love that. Um, Kent District Library is trying to grab some different ones. So like, the Lawrence Library is like rock and roll audio production. The Ada Podcast Studio here at the Kent District Library System was like very like podcast like recording. And one thing I liked on their website was this, because I always am like, I know you all are here learning and like library makers folks love learning, but I'm always telling this to so many of my other folks is half what we do as library workers is connect people to resources. And for me, I'm not a surgeon, but if someone comes in looking for knee surgery materials, they don't expect me to be ready to give them a knee surgery, thankfully. But I can point them to resources, and same, they kind of have on here like library staff aren't experts. So, but we can orient you and kind of get you set up, but make sure you sort of are ready to do your stuff. So, the Do Space, the Omaha Public Library just opened a brand new central and it's beautiful. And they have this, I also haven't been here in person yet, but like a podcast studio. This looks like real deal. So cool. Um, Again, I'll kind of share some of these links. Sonoma County Library Systems also have like a sound studio. And they have two, which is pretty sweet. And I also loved like the different ways in which people say like, here's some basics. They made a like how-to video on YouTube. Um, and some of this actually goes deeper into like the DAW, right? See, they have GarageBand. Um, Spokane, the King County Library Systems. I'm going to pull up the University of Washington up in Seattle because they have like audio and recording studios in their like undergrad library, which is cool. So like this isn't just specific their School of Music, but it's sort of like an open scholarship commons recording studio. Uh, and they sort of have all of the different stuff that they've got in there, which is nice. And as you all probably do already, it's so nice to see what other people's policies and equipment are, so you can kind of see who's doing something similar to the types of things your patrons want to do. So with that, that's kind of like, the whole of my little slide deck. So I can stop, well, I can keep sharing my screen in case people have questions or want to see something again. Um, but I wasn't tracking if there was questions in the chat or like thoughts, ideas, things that you might still have questions on. Feel free to ask. We got some time. Oh, the Melrose Studio, cool. That's what all the British DJs use. Nice.
I'm just kind of glancing through. Stephanie asked, is the ability to take the work home on the free tier? So I think you were talking about I think it was Audacity you were talking about earlier that the question was part of because they can access it at the library, but then like work on it at home, or maybe it was like the band lab,
Might have
maybe.
been Band Lab. I was asking me again for my birthday, but that's okay. Um, and you'll see it wants you to have all these tools and perks. Great question. BandLab, you can access it anywhere, anytime. I only have the free version. You can actually see it's saved old projects of mine all the way from back when I, first made this account. And this is sort of my experimental library account. So mostly I just call these new projects or Jello. But it saved them. All of my stuff is still there in the cloud. And the other nice thing is like, I'll just open this one. It gives you a preview. So if you end up, or your patrons end up having a ton of songs on here, you can download the track directly, but you can also go back into the studio and it will sort of load all of your recordings. I think it looks like it's still sort of like loading itself because everything's a little grayed out. And I don't know what this sounds like, so I'm not necessarily going to just like play it, but it saves everything. And then let's say that you're done creating and you want to actually share the file out, because this is one thing I should mention, unlike a lot of DAWs, is think about them also like Microsoft Word, right? If you're writing a paper or typing some sort of document, but you want like the physical thing, you need to like either save it as a PDF if you want to keep it digital or a Word doc. But then you need to send it to a printer to like have the piece of paper. So a lot of digital audio workstations, when you have project files, it will reopen them in the software, but it won't necessarily play them on like a media player or like be able to send it to your friend via email. Um, but you can actually go to, let's see, there we go. In BandLab here, it's under project and then download. And you'll see there's something tracks or mixed down as. And a lot of audio softwares are like this, where you can say, just want to export an individual track. because maybe, you're working with Beyonce and you just want her vocals because you're putting all the music underneath. So you're like, hey, Beyonce, send me your vocal track. I don't want the bass lines because we're going to do something else. Or if you want all of it, it's mixed down. And then you can see, even with the free version, it lets me export them as different types of media files. MP3 is probably something you all recognize. It's sort of a standard compressed audio, but they also have WAV, which is uncompressed, which is a larger sound file, but you get all of the information for the audio. Yeah, great question. So yeah, BandLab, super powerful. Um, Folks can take it home and work on it. And the downside is that BandLab, like the new version, let's see if I can go back home. Man, this is, I'm just going to bandlab.com. Seems like every time I've been going to the website, it's been asking me to put in birthday. Probably because it doesn't believe that I was born in 1938, but they don't know. I'm 86. Anyway, downside is, it's kind of the social media platform, but like for a lot of the younger patrons I work with, they like this. Um, so, it's great for that if that's what folks want. And then the other downside is they do have to have their own separate email account and then remember their passwords, which can or cannot be tricky for patrons, just depending on what's happening. Yeah,
I'm looking through the chat again. I'm sorry to interrupt her.
no,
Okay.
not at all.
Stephanie also added that Orange County, Florida's Melrose Center, it looks like they might have a good audio setup as well.
Nice. No, that's awesome. And like I
Uh,
said, um, yeah, there's a ton of different, I think, libraries out there that have different types of recording programs. And we didn't necessarily go into the deeper technical stuff today of like, how do I have an in or an out? Um, or make things. But there's a lot of resources out there, as you all know, being library workers, um, that can kind of help get you started. And like I said, some of these, like even this Ableton Learn, learning sense or like learning music, I just really like because it sort of helps you think about, oh, like what are these digital sounds? And then how do I use them to make more audio?
oh, one question I wanted to bring up, this is in the chat, this is something I was thinking about during the presentation, Coley. I know like for some places like where you're doing recording, is there like any like kind of sound panels that you might recommend?
Yeah, great
Um,
question. Great question. Yeah, this is something that I know comes up a lot. My first and foremost thing is most things are not soundproof. So you mostly want to look for things that say they're sound dampening. There's like some foam. I actually always say some of the best things you can do is get something that's known as a bass trap, which sounds funny, but it does exactly what you think it's doing, where it helps trap the bass sound waves. So if you think about sound, um, a deeper sound has a longer wavelength, and your higher pitch stuff has a higher frequency of sound. And sound is a physical thing. And so using some of these sort of bass traps or sound dampening panels can help, just even if you're not making the space totally soundproof, help the recording qualities just be that much better. Let me see. So let me see if B&H Fleet Video have some. Yeah, Auralex is a pretty well-known brand. So there's some of these like studio wedges. So these are sort of the stuff that you can mount and they're really light. So that's nice too, as you can get some tacky things and like place them around the room. I was gonna see if they had like a base. And you can see some of these are a little bit less expensive. Then as you kind of start rolling down and there's these heavier sound panels that are for mounting. Um, but it sort of just depends. And I would say like one thing you could always do if you are like revamping a library space is try to see if there's like a local audio production company that you can either help have you install things or give you recommendations. And I don't, if I search bass trap, I'm not even sure if they've got them, but let's see. Oh, they do. These are kind of some of the ones that I think are like just a great place to start to at least kind of get your corners. So these usually, as you can see by the picture, they go in like corners of the room. Um, and they just kind of help point the bass back into the recording room because bass likes to not stay. It just likes to escape. That's why when you've got loudspeakers driving by, you usually feel the vibration of the bass first before the like high frequencies. Um, yeah. So, and yeah, I always say like I love audio and things, but I also think you can make something sound good without any of that fancy stuff too. And it's just a matter of you can work with mixing the audio in your software, or you can like cardboard. Cardboard is great. You can like make little folded things in cardboard up because I know libraries always have a ton of cardboard.
All right. I don't see any more questions. So we'll go ahead and probably call it here. I just want to give a quick chance to thank everybody for coming in today and checking out our webinar. I'm going to share a couple links into the chat for you guys. So the first one, if you are interested in joining a committee on library makers and helping to host some set like to either host events and stuff or like do some community outreach things with them as well. There's a form you can sign up to self-nominate, and also let us know what you thought of today's session. So complete the survey below, and let us know like what other things you want to see from library makers. And a quick little shout out. We are going to be at ALA this year in Chicago. So if you guys want to, I think we're presenting, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be presenting. So stop by, say hi. And yeah, if there's nothing else, then I guess I'll leave everything open so you guys can get a chance to click on any of the links. We'll share all of this information when we upload the video to YouTube. Until then, we'll catch you guys later.